Hark thee then to my words, and through them behold the vision that I did glimpse, that of the Eighth Umbral Calamity.
The Eighth Umbral Calamity occurred in an alternative timeline to that of the story of Final Fantasy XIV. It was a calamity which resulted in mass death and destruction on Aetheris. So much so, even generations later, civilization had not recovered. The calamity itself was caused by the release of a deadly Garlean weapon called Black Rose, an alchemical weapon that, when exposed to, caused a living creature's aether to cease, resulting in death. Normally this would be isolated to the release side of the gas, but combined with the light aspected aether from the first reflection, Black Rose spread across continents, resulting in the Eighth Umbral Calamity. 200 years later, G'rahatia travelled back in time and space to the first reflection, with the intention of preventing the rejoining and, by extension, the calamity itself. And he succeeded. The calamity never happened. But have you ever wondered why it happened in the first place? What choices and actions were taken and or subverted by G'rahatia's interference? I went out to answer this question, and what I came up with feels so on point it might as well be canon. I could very well just tell you my theory right now, but without context it doesn't have the same impact. For that reason, I will tell you the tale of this timeline up until the calamity. Before we begin, however, we need to get the wibbly wobbly timey-wimey out of the way.
Make it a simple explanation please, people hate time travel.
I will, don't worry. As I stated before, the calamity occurred in an alternate timeline to that of the game's story. For the sake of this video, I will refer to this timeline as the Black Rose timeline, and the timeline of the story of FF14 I will refer to as the main timeline. To begin, let's go back to well before the timelines diverged, the moment Minfilia and the Warriors of Darkness travelled back to the first.
No! Stand back! Your time has not yet come.
Minfilia!
They were successful in halting the flood, but the first was now heavily aspected to light. Indeed, by Ascian standards, this reflection was in an optimal position for rejoining. G'rahatia's actions on the first allowed what remained of civilization to endure, and indeed defend themselves from the Sin Eaters born of the flood. But on what we know of rejoinings, however, the status of civilization on the first is irrelevant. The star itself was aspected to the one the Ascians intended. Now, they need only open the floodgates on the source. If you're interested in learning more about the rejoining phenomenon, check out my previous video linked in the description, where I outline the entire process.
Chilling your own videos? Revolting.
Hey, could be worse. I could be telling you about some protein food you don't give a moogle about. Now we fast forward to the point where the timeline splits. This moment was not when G'rahatia and the Crystal Tower appeared on the first, rather by an action he undertook. This action was G'raha's first failed attempt to summon the Warrior of Light to the first. This happened during an important meeting of the Eorzean Alliance in Ala Mhigo.
Mistress Lyse, Commander Aldin, it gives me great pleasure to formally welcome the city-state of Ala Mhigo to the Eorzean Alliance.
The pleasure is ours, Your Grace. I know I speak for all Ala Mhigans when I say that we are glad of this chance to stand with our comrades of the Alliance.
And we for our part are glad indeed to be able to welcome friends both old and new.
Lord Hien of Doma, at your service. Pray, accept my heartfelt thanks for your generous invitation.
The purpose of this meeting was to formally introduce Ala Mhigo into the Eorzean Alliance, and Doma as an allied state. As the meeting goes on, the subject turns to the Garleans. The Empire didn't take the liberation of Doma and Ala Mhigo lying down, and everyone knew one day soon the Empire would make their move. As they pondered what actions to take, Thancred had something in mind.
While I see the wisdom in targeting the Ascians, an assassination attempt on Garlean soil would do little to aid our cause, even were it to succeed. It's time we used our enemy's preferred tactic: subterfuge. We dispatched the shinobi to Imperial territory. There, they sow the rumor that the Crown Prince perished in the battle for Alamigo, and that the man parading around is in fact a corpse inhabited by a servant of darkness.
Well, it does have the ring of truth about it. And were the Garleans to learn that their future ruler is a puppet, the Empire would be shaken to the core.
But at the risk of sounding stupid, would they actually believe such an unlikely story? I didn't.
Ordinarily not. But prior to his miraculous recovery, rumors of Xenos' death had already begun to circulate around the Empire. Ultimately, however, what the masses believe is not our chief concern. Our true objective is to create an opening for rival factions within Garlemald to exploit.
Just as a war of succession erupted in the wake of Emperor Solus's death.
A war which raged until but recently, plunging the Imperial House into disarray as nephew and uncle grappled for the throne. It is no coincidence that one of Varus's first acts as Emperor was to name Xenos heir apparent, family feuds being so tiresome when armies are involved. Not all welcomed his choice of successor, however. There is no shortage of individuals who aspire to the throne, who would jump at any chance to seize power. The news that Xenos is not only dead, but a puppet to diabolical forces, would be too enticing to ignore. I am no stranger to infiltrating Imperial territory. With a team of operatives gathered from among the Alliance's finest, the plan should have a reasonable chance of success.
Just as Thancred finished laying out his plan, it happened.
That way. Sorrow. History must be changed.
This is the moment. The instant Grahatia tried to summon the Warrior of Light, the timeline split.
Ahead looms a calamity. Ahead looms light, expunging all form and life. Twin dooms only you can forestall. Only you.
What's the matter?
There's a voice.
Let expanse contract. Eon become instant. Throw wide the gates that we may pass.
Is it over?
Master Thancred!
He failed to summon us, and instead summoned Thancred's soul to the first, leaving his body on the source in a comatose state. But this is the main timeline, and we are researching the Black Rose timeline. Let's rewind the clock a couple of minutes. This moment never happened. The meeting continues uninterrupted. Thancred finishes laying out his ideas on how to execute them. The Alliance leaders agree to the proposal, and the Scions take the lead of the endeavour alongside Doma. The remainder of the meeting shifts to other topics regarding the city-states, and their newly expanded alliance.
So what now?
Now, my good friend, we are in uncharted territory. We don't know the full layout of the Black Rose timeline for this point onwards, but we know how the main timeline goes, so I'll fill in the puzzle pieces from there. Thancred would depart for Ilzabar to begin the plan of sowing the seeds of dissent. At this point in time, Alphino is still with Gaius in Ilzabar, investigating the Empire and Black Rose. The rest of the Scions would continue their work. things would continue rather normally, since they didn't have to worry about their friends falling into a coma. Now we skip ahead. Rumours quickly swell in the provinces that Crown Priest Xenos was dead, and that a servant of darkness now inhabited his body. Emperor Varus is forced to spend much of his time quelling such rumours, and fending off potential vies for the throne. As it happens, his legions are already in place to keep the provinces under control. The plan to sow discourse worked better than expected, long before a boot of the Empire would ever tread upon the Ghimlyt Dark. But this wouldn't last forever. Varus had the Empire's legions move into position for an attack against the Eorzean Alliance. The Alliance, however, had plenty of time to prepare, and their lines were drawn at the Ghimlyt Dark, with both sides facing one another awaiting the order. As the Empire moved into position, Alphinaud would return from Iltzabar to inform the Alliance of everything he's learned about Black Rose and the Empire. Gaius Balzar, meanwhile, would remain in Iltzabar, and in the end we never crossed paths. As the Scions and Alliance leaders discuss the matter at hand, an envoy confirms Emperor Varus has agreed to parley. This meeting would decide if the battle ahead would go forward. This is parley on the front lines. I made a video breaking down this entire meeting from a lore perspective. It's well worth a look, and I'll leave a link in the description.
Oh my goodness, Wyrm, again?
The meeting would play out just as it did in the main timeline. The main difference being Alphinaud would be the Scion's representative, not Alizé. In the main timeline, Alizé channeled a lot of her brother's spirit in her words, so I feel Alphinaud would say much of the same. The meeting ends with both sides in disagreement, and the leaders retreat back to their lines. Shortly after, the Battle of Ghimlyt Dark began.
This is the moment, isn't it?
That's right. What info we have states the Eighth Umbral Calamity was triggered during this battle. Both sides would clash across the line, with Garlean airships overhead blasting the battlefield. The Garleans had what seemed to be an endless army. For each soldier the Alliance defeated, more would paratroop in from the sky. The Warrior of Light and Alizé would take to the field together just like in the main timeline, but this time they were not alone. The full might of the Scions marched behind them. Together, alongside the Alliance leaders, they breached the Empire's vanguard and made for their commander in the field. The Warrior of Light and Xenos stood face to face, just like what happened in the Shadowbringers trailer. Elidibus is a formidable opponent, but we have the full might of the Scions at our back. The battle is fierce, but in a crucial moment, the Warrior of Light cuts him down. As the broken husk that was Xenos falls to the ground, he grins a menacing smile, before the soul of Elidibus escapes into the rift. The Empire's forces see their commander and Crown Prince fall on the battlefield, and the Eorzean Alliance pushes their advantage. The battle continues on, with the Empire losing more and more ground. Emperor Varus is overseeing the battle, and knew full well that the Xenos who fell was an imposter. Unwilling to lose this conflict, Varus stood up and gave the order. Deploy Black Rose. Projectiles are fired from the Garlean lines, and the deadly gas is released across the battlefield. Within mere seconds, anything living that comes into contact with it falls lifeless to the ground. The Alliance forces are wiped out. The city-state leaders that stood with them on the field drop dead on the spot. Alphinaud warns that it's Black Rose, and Y'shtola quickly identifies what's happening, but it's too late. The gas takes on a life of its own and quickly spreads across the entire area. The Scions of the Seventh Dawn all succumb to Black Rose. The Blessing of Light shields the Warrior of Light to an extent, but as the gas fills their lungs and poisons their body, their aether stills, then stops, and they too succumb. The Garleans don't get off unscathed. The gas wipes out their forces as well, as it quickly overruns their lines. Varys is taken aback by what's happening, before the weapon he himself ordered to be fired surrounds him in a deadly haze. Black Rose then spirals further out of control, going on to spread far beyond the battlefield. As Black Rose spreads beyond the Ghimlyt Dark, bringing death to the very soil, the etheric barrier around Aetheris is breached, and the first transforms into pure light aspected aether which flows onto the source, triggering the Eighth rejoining and further fueling the calamity.
Wyrm, there is something I don't understand. Why didn't the Empire use Black Rose in the main timeline?
That, Namingway, is the question I originally researched that inspired this video, and happy to say I found my answer. If you compare the Black Rose timeline to the main timeline, the difference on Aetheris is Grahatia didn't summon the souls of the other Scions, and hidden within these acts is the answer. There was one Scion, whose presence on Aetheris during the Black Rose timeline was the tipping point for whether Black Rose would be triggered or not, and that Scion was Thancred Waters. Let's rewind the clock back to the Alliance meeting with the Scions in Alamigo. Thancred lays out his plans for sowing discontent in the Empire's provinces, with the help of the Doman Shinobi. It's this mission that's the deciding factor for Black Rose being deployed in the Black Rose timeline. In the main timeline, with Thancred gone, the mission is given to the Shinobi and other allies to plan out and execute. During the Battle of Ghimlyt Dark in the main timeline, as Varys sat in his command post, he received word that the provinces were in a state of unrest, as rumours spread about Xenos being a servant of darkness. Varys thus had to quit the battlefield before the battle's conclusion. The commanders that remained on the battlefield had no authority to deploy Black Rose, if indeed they had it with them. In the Black Rose timeline, however, Thancred quickly took charge of the mission and led the operation in Garlemald. As a result, Varys had to deal with these rumours and unrest much sooner, and indeed he had done so before travelling to Ghimlyt Dark. With Black Rose ready, by his authority was it deployed. In the end, it was the efficiency of Thancred's leadership in executing the plan that ultimately resulted in Black Rose being used. It's a very odd twist of fate that Grahatia sought to prevent the calamity, and without realising it, his summoning of Thancred's soul did just that. And it's only with the benefit of hindsight that we can put these pieces together.
Holy moly, Thancred, what have you done?
It just goes to show that the smallest change can snowball into an avalanche. But that, my friends, is what caused the Eighth Umbral Calamity.